Around 2 months ago, I made a post on YouTube asking people for what they average and to comment their exact averages down below. The options consisted of 10 to 20, 20 to 30, 30 plus, and I can't solve yet want to learn. However, right after I finished this, I thought of doing something bigger. In short, I wrote a lot of code, got access to the average of all people who competed in cubing competitions, and plotted this information on some graphs. But it's important to note that a lot of people quit cubing, so their results shouldn't count. So because of this, I decided that I would use the results of everyone whose last competition was a year ago. Here's what I got. 9.1% of people who competed in the last year are sub 10. 39.1% of cubers, which is by far the highest, average 10 to 20. 20.2% of cubers have an average of 20 to 30. 12% of cubers have an average of 30 to 40. 7.51% of all cubers average 40 to 50. 5% of cubers average 50 to 60, and around 8% of all cubers have an average time of 1 minute or more. So because the time range of 10 to 20 connects to most cubers, I'm going to be dividing that time range into 3 parts: 16 to 19 seconds, 13 to 15 seconds, and 10 to 12 seconds. And for each time range, I'll be giving 2 to 3 tips on how to improve. So without further ado, let's get straight into it. The first range we're going to discuss is the 16 to 19 second range. This is by far the easiest stage to improve on, so let's start off with the first improvement, which is to become full OLA and full PLO. Most people don't take this seriously because they think that it's too hard or it makes no difference. Well, here's a perfect example as to why it can shave off a couple seconds. Any cuber who's full PLO will know this case as the EPERM, and once it's fully in your muscle memory, you can do these 17 moves in 1 second, like so. However, let's say you weren't full PLO, then you would know this case as a diagonal swap. So the same case would change your move count from 17 moves to 31 moves, and you would do this like so. So even if you still aren't convinced, I made a video that shows you how to learn algorithms much faster, and I'll link that video with 2 other good videos on OLA and PLO algs in the description below. The second tip that can help break the 16 to 19 second range is to improve your cross. The best way you can do this is to stop treating your cross as 4 individual cross pieces and to start treating it as a group of pieces working together. How would this look like? Well, here's an example. So currently all of our cross pieces are here, 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 and here. So what I would do first is I would move orange into this slot by doing R. So now this sets it up in a way which the orange cross piece and the green cross piece can be solved in 1 move, like so. But it also sets it up in a way in which if we just do D, then after we insert red into orange slot with F and blue into green slot with L2, every single cross edge is on its opposite. So that means the whole cross can be solved with D2. Now our cross is solved. So not only is this cross a lot more efficient, but it shows that you can make your cross efficient by treating it as 4 pieces working together instead of solving 4 pieces. The next range is a 13 to 15 second range. This range is probably what most of you watching this video average, and it's pretty hard to break past this. But there is one major thing that you can start to add in your solves that will drastically reduce your times, and it's called look ahead. Here's how it works. If these 2 pairs were in my muscle memory, that means I can just close my eyes and solve the pair, like so. But what most cubers do is that instead of looking at other corners and other edges, they look at the pair that they're solving while they're solving it. This is why, right after they finish a pair, they need to pause for a couple of seconds to look for the other pair. But if instead they look at other corners and other edges, the transition between pair to pair will become a lot smoother. The next tip I can give you guys is to solve all your F2L cases in 8 moves or less. The reason why this is so important is because F2L is the most time-consuming step in a CFOP solve. So if you know how to solve all your F2L cases efficiently, you can solve F2L much faster. Here's a good example of a mistake that a lot of cubers make. Over here, we have a pair that needs to be inserted in the back, like so. But what most cubers will do, who average around 13 to 15 seconds, is they will immediately take out the pair. And from here, we have 8 more moves to solve the entire pair, which is 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. However, if instead we take out the pair in a way that can set up for an easy insert, like so, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, now that sets up this insert, which is 6, 7, 8. It can be solved in 8 moves. The last tip for you guys is to fix your bad algorithms or bad finger tricks. This is really important because even if you have a really good cross and F2L during a solve, one lockup in OLL or PLL is enough to make it a bad one. The easiest way to make sure your algs and finger tricks aren't holding you back is to watch OLL and PLL algorithm videos of fast cubers so that you know the proper way to do them and if your algorithms are correct. The final range is a 10 to 12 second range, which is objectively the hardest to break. If you're in this range, I'm assuming that you try to implement look ahead in your solves and can comfortably solve your cross in 8 moves or less. So our first tip is going to combine this two to create a process called cross plus 1, which basically means to predict your first pair in inspection. This step can really help you because it smoothens the transition between cross and your first pair. So here's how that will look like, and I'll leave the scramble up here for you guys to follow along. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to take a scramble and predict my first pair as well as how I'm going to solve my cross. And then we'll see if I was correct. So currently all of our cross pieces are here, 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 and here. And I'll first start off with my cross. So I'm thinking to solve my cross with, first I'll do U prime, which will move green over here. Then I'll do R prime, which moves orange down into blue slot. Now green is over here. Then I'll do L, which will move blue over here. Now red's up here. Then I'll insert blue in the back with B. So now orange and blue are one move away from being solved in their own slots. Now since red's up here, I can solve it with L2. So now orange, blue, and red are one move away from being solved, while green's over here. Then I can just move this whole thing to the right, and I can insert green, and I can solve the cross in 2 moves by just moving this thing twice. So I think that's our whole cross. So now let's see how our cross moves impact the pair. So first, our first move is U prime. So what that will do is it'll move this corner over here. So now this pair is actually connected and it's an actual pair. Then we do R prime, which has no effect on the pair. Then we do L. So L will move the pair down, with blue being over here and red being over here. Then after we do B, it has no effect on the pair. Then we do L2, sorry. L2 will move the pair over here. So now it'll form something like this in the back, except it's green. So now all of our other moves have no effect on the pair because they're just R moves and G moves. So they have no effect on the pair. So now let's see if I was correct. So first we do U prime, R prime, L, B, L2. Then we solve our cross with no effect on the pair and we can go straight into our pair. And the good thing about cross plus 1 is that right after you finish your pair, it's easy to look ahead because as you're solving your pair, you can look for other corners and other edges, which I was looking for this, and you can just do the whole thing. And the easiest process to train cross plus 1 is by doing solves with an infinite amount of inspection. So that way you can just really see how each piece moves in your mind. The final tip for this range and for this video is to learn 3 to 4 advanced F2L tricks that you can use in your solves. For me, I have around 5 really good tricks that I use a lot in my solves, and I'll be showing you guys 2 of my favorites. I'll also link a video down below in the description where I share 4 F2L tricks. So the first one is when you have this pair, but it has to be inserted in the back. And what most cubers would do is they would rotate, they would solve it like so. That's good, but we want to try to avoid rotations in F2L. So instead, we can just do wide R prime, U prime, R, U, M. And it's also really easy to set up and do. The next happens when you have your pair on the opposite side facing upwards and it has to be inserted in the back. Again, what most cubers would do, they would do this and rotate. But instead, we can just do R prime, F, U prime, push, R. And it can also be mirrored on the opposite side. So that's about it for the video. I hope it helped you guys out. And if it did, subscribe and like, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.